East versus West.
The red threat.
Self-preservation.
Hidden danger.
National security.
Personal versus political. This was America in the 1960s, a time of fear and espionage, prosperity and success against a Cold War backdrop.
You can really see this in the movies and books released.
Yeah, definitely. The media at the time portrays the successes of the West while creating an image of the East as backwards and evil.
I agree. However, the literature of this period subverts this by revealing some key concerns: national security and the omnipresent threat of the enemy. It introduced the key theme of personal versus political, how the country and the greater good are more important than self-preservation, and that our people are expendable for national security. They are just cogs in an intelligence machine.
I think the American public were fully aware of the situation they were in. Films such as Dr. Strangelove reflect the public's anxiety during this period, with comedy as a coping method.
Cold War literature such as Le Carre's Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy explores the opposing sides, East versus West, good versus evil. The West see themselves as having the moral high ground, but is this really true?
Adding to that, I recently read The Spy Who Came From the Cold, another Le Carre novel. He definitely explores the moral positions of the East versus the West, subverting the audience's expectations by revealing that the main antagonist, a cruel and heartless communist, was actually a double agent for the West.
That makes me question whether the West really had the moral high ground.
Exactly. Everyone speaks in riddles. No one truly understands what's happening, except for those at the very top.
That's similar to The Professor in North by Northwest. The film reflects multiple Cold War concerns: mistaken identity, national security, hidden danger, and the inability of the justice system to protect the individual.
Roger Thornhill is forced to prove his own innocence, demonstrating the fact that police and the law can no longer be relied on. Thornhill was seen as expendable, used by the Professor as a tool to protect his agents, and national security had, and still has, precedence over personal preservation.
His identity constantly merges with the persona of Kaplan, reflecting how in this era, no one is who they seem to be, forcing the audience to reflect on the permeability of identity.
Yeah, we have to note this. Everyone adopts different personalities to further their own goals.
The human factor follows the perspective of a bureaucrat working at MI6 who is leaking information to the Soviets. The book explores the hypocrisy of the West.
Can the West really call themselves moral?
The real question is whether there is a good and bad side at all. Like with your book, my book questioned the morality of the West as how the protagonist constantly has to choose between self-preservation and the greater good. A scene which displays the themes of hidden danger, mistaken identity, and morality is when Thornhill hides from the detectives in the train station.
Thornhill, disguised as a porter, used his assumed identity.
Hello, Alma, what have you got in these bags?
Bowling balls, naturally.
Eve doesn't give a straight answer to a simple question, reflecting the secretive nature of the Cold War period.
I also noticed that Thornhill uses a mask for shaving cream. He hides in plain sight, showing how communism could be anywhere. Thornhill's small razor represents how Thornhill is out of place and isolated. The justice system has failed him, and he has to prove his own innocence.
Another scene which reflects the themes of the Cold War milieu is when Thornhill is leaving the auction. Thornhill immediately resorts to humour.
Well, let's have some smiles and good cheer.
To diffuse tension, which reflects how in the Cold War era, words have underlying meaning and cannot be taken at face value.
Don't you know who I am?
Here, Thornhill assumes a persona of the UN killer
Chicago Police capture United Nations killer.
to protect himself from Van Damme, displaying how in the Cold War era, one's identity is abused for personal gain. The policeman doesn't believe Thornhill's claim until he picks up a newspaper, displaying the influence of media in this period.
Yeah, but despite Thornhill being wanted for murder, the cop receives orders to ignore the charges from the Professor. This is because in the Cold War, national security takes precedence over even murder. Also, the Professor's reluctance to intervene until now represents Thornhill's and everyone's expendability.
National security and the morally questionable acts a country will go through to preserve said security is a major aspect of the human factor. MI6 goes to extreme lengths to prevent a leak, including killing off Davis, one of their agents, saying that with a dose of aflatoxin, he'll hardly suffer at all. Furthermore, MI6 performs this murder with circumstantial evidence, treating the murder of a man as a preemptive strike, using the metaphor, a complacent husband is always at the mercy of the lover, i.e. act before it's too late, as a means to justify the cause. This nonchalant tone displays the government's willingness to turn a blind eye to what would normally be the crimes for the greater good.
In The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, Lemus, a disillusioned British spy, begins to confront the morality of the Cold War. Morality becomes a tool used by both sides to justify their own actions. When Lemus is asked about the philosophy against communism, he simply answers, "I just think the whole lot of you are bastards." What Lemus doesn't know is the amount of information being hidden from him by his own side. The lack of trust during the Cold War period affects the intelligence community, resulting in one person having absolute control. The Cold War milieu was characterized by the themes of mistaken identity, national security, i.e. for the greater good, personal versus political, and constant danger and surveillance. In the end, Control says to Lemus, We do disagreeable things so that ordinary people here and elsewhere can sleep safely in their beds at night. Is that too romantic?
Their children.